You are now tuned into the Anxious Ambition podcast, where you'll be hearing raw and unfiltered conversations with those who struggle with mental illness but refuse to let that get in the way of them achieving their dreams. Our hope is that by hearing their stories, you are inspired to do more. Here are their stories.
Anxious Ambition.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Anxious Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Justin Allen. So today's guest is a practicing licensed therapist who specializes in trauma, athletes, and substance abuse. He's also the director of mental performance at MOD Volleyball Club. He's also had his own journey with mental health. And today to share his story, Rob Samp. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Justin.
You're welcome, man.
I appreciate it. Interesting. This will be the first podcast I'm on, so I hope I do your show some justice here.
I hope it's not your last. You'll be just fine.
Sure.
So, I mean, the first thing I like to ask people, can you tell me a little bit about your mental health journey?
Yeah, shoot. It's interesting because I didn't realize I was really having issues with it until about November of last year.
Wow.
Now, I had gone through my bouts of seasonal depression, but I was always able to find like the thing to pull me out. Maybe it was, I'd forgotten that I wasn't really taking care of myself through nutrition. So, I was really trying to boost up, eating some more vegetables, getting some more healthy fats, a lot more protein, a lot less eating out. Turns out gut health really helping that, really helping that depression. And honestly, just gave me a little bit of a purpose. So that was cool. But man, symptom relief was what I was experiencing there. Other things I was looking at was like, who am I not connecting to? Who have I forgotten to connect to? So like, personal connection, interpersonal connection had been huge. And I had been recognizing this seasonal depression since about 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking to myself, like, these are just phases. But then, man, I started to reflect, introspect a little bit. And I'm thinking to myself, I went through a big depressive episode, like sophomore year through senior year in high school.
Okay.
Self-medicating through cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
Just like after school, it was just hitting the blunt and escaping through video games. And through further introspection, you kind of ask, like, why? Like, what's the purpose there?
Mm-hmm.
What am I doing? Well, I mean, let's be fair. Like drugs are fun, right? Drugs, right. I mean, they are, and right. We misuse them.
Yeah.
And so I was doing that. And so what was I was finding that I needed to process something, and my outlet wasn't another human. I wish it was my mom, but at the time in high school, she was going back to school. She's an art therapist, okay. Trauma informed as well. Also trying to keep the family together logistically. Like, where's the money coming from? Who's getting rides to and from? I got an older sister. Like, who's taking her to her events? Who's taking me to my orchestra rehearsals and my show choir and my volleyball? Mm-hmm. And then like Dad, he had not necessarily been like emotionally available, but he was all like, logistically he was there. Like, let's get you to practice. Let's get you some good food. But some of those questions had always been, and they always felt like surface level. So I was starting to think it wasn't just about the seasonal depression. It wasn't just, like the weed in high school just wasn't, it wasn't just about let's have some fun after school. I mean, Modern Warfare was out. Skyrim was there. Like, right. It wasn't just about that. Mm-hmm. And so come November, and I'm talking like after the pandemic, I'm doing all the symptom relief I can find, the self-care, you name it, even throughout getting trained at Adler University for those 3 years from 2018 to since this last year, 2021. I thought to myself, like, man, just keep taking care of yourself on the surface. You got this. Then I went to this Emdr training. And if you're going to get trained to do the intervention as a licensed therapist, you go through it. So you know what to expect from your clients. And I hit this neural pathway where I was like, what if it was the distance that I felt from my dad, and potentially a little bit of the emotional distance I felt from my mom in the crucial years of like middle school, of really trying to relate emotionally to somebody that was the reason why I'm having not only this like these depressive episodes, but like that maybe the relationships, friendships aren't really working, and that the romantic relationships aren't really working, and that I've always felt like I didn't necessarily have like an inner circle and wasn't necessarily reciprocating love. And I had, I mean, deep reflective thoughts after after this training. And I remember reflecting back to this back to my training partner, and the training lead had stepped in to our session, and she's like, "Rob, you're hitting a blocking belief right now. There's a reason why we can't go any further here. You're dancing around a very core neural pathway that's been so deeply ingrained. I would suggest you see a great friend of mine, Vito Alberga." And ever since that, after the training, I go to Vito. It's Friday, and I mean, it was a full hour of just releasing. It was all the emotions, all the pent up. I mean, it essentially did shape the way I attach to humans.
Wow.
And
can you
so
tell people a little bit more? Sorry, what?
Yeah.
For someone who has no idea what EMDR is, can you explain that a little bit?
So we're looking at eye movement, desensitization, reprocessing. Okay. It's a way of looking at how our autonomic nervous system is firing and putting us into these fight, flight, or freeze responses. And it's a way of desensitizing that initial response, normally generating this negative belief. And for me, the negative belief was, I don't deserve love, and I'm not worth it. I can't protect myself. There's a real vulnerability to I can't protect myself. And with that belief, comes that initial like electric response where I'm shutting down, dissociating, trying to protect myself, just escaping from reality. And after desensitizing that, then what we work to do is the reprocessing, which is installing a more adaptive belief, which for me would be like, I've got love and self-worth regardless. Okay. Or honestly, anything that I would come up with that I would want to believe in instead. And the goal here is to tap into our brain's natural ability to heal itself. The brain has a natural ability to adapt to what's happening in the present moment. But when we're hijacked, because we had gone through something like a traumatic experience, and we don't necessarily know how to process that, then we make that connection and it just kind of stays there. It just kind of stays. So for me, I had a couple traumatic experiences in middle school. Okay. And so very much a part of me is trapped in middle school. There's these neurons that are firing these survival instincts because of that experience, but for weird stuff today.
Interesting.
I can't get out of bed today. Why? Well, I can't get out of bed today because I don't know. Maybe is it a food thing? Well, no, that'd be really symptom. I could just get food, right? Is it because I'm not prepared? Well, no. Was there not to be prepared for? And there's a connection there that I haven't worked through, and that's why I'm freezing. I'm literally in that survival state in bed in the morning. Some tough conversations with people would trigger this response from me. And it's like, dude, this is like, I've known this guy forever. I've known this person. Why am I doing this? Turns out it's the brain firing like it believes I'm still 14, that I'm still 6 years old, that I'm still 8 years old.
That's wild.
And so,
amazing.
It blew my mind.
Yeah, literally. Could you hear? I mean, you hear about stuff like this, and it's like, oh, but it makes sense. Like the way you're describing it, is someone that has done no research on it. You're distracting yourself in a way to break through that plateau or whatever it is that's holding you back, so you can actually honestly say fuck you to your brain at that moment. Just say, hey, no, we need to get deeper and get through. You know what I mean? Like it's really interesting because I feel those blockages. I'm sure many people do, and it's like, why? You can't find that reason because it's so deeply rooted. Wow.
And it's interesting. The actual practice is using tactile feedback across your midline. Okay. So from left to right to left to right, or the eyes left to right, left to right. Sometimes we tap on our lap. Sometimes we've got these like buzzers that will make tactile sensations and vibrate from left to right, left to right. And the idea there is not only are we activating both sides of the brain, but there's a little bit of body distraction, like you were talking about. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then from there, we get to tap into what's really behind why I was so angry in that conversation last week.
Mhm.
Oh, it turns out it's a reenactment from how I viewed, I'm just making this up right now, but it turns out
Sure.
it's a reenactment from how I viewed a very crucial conversation between my grandparents.
Mhm.
And I used to always see them do that. And I just thought that it was the thing.
Mhm.
And turns out the conversation last week, like that person didn't deserve it.
Right.
I just completely internalized it like it was, me at 6 years old again, listening to this stuff.
I'm sure so many people
I
can
know.
relate to that because like all these moments are flashing through my head. And I'm sure many people, it's like, man, why? Or even like get an argument with like, well, I'm going to say like my wife or anyone in general. It's like, why did that just happen? Like it was just not necessary. You look at it like in hindsight, it's like, what? It's just not at all the reaction I should have had. Um, if someone was like looking to get into this, is this new or like is it hard to find someone that's practicing it?
That's a fair question. I'm actually fairly new with it,
Okay.
which explains some of. I bet you I could fill in the blanks if I got a little bit more trained.
Sure.
There's levels and stuff there, right? And a lot more.
Sure.
There's books on books.
Yeah.
Um, and it's been around. It's because it's been around since about the 80s.
Okay.
So the process and the education surrounding it, plus the research to give the backing, the proper backing, so that we can um, do this with a lot of success is the reason why we're at today. It started off started minimalist if we were to look in hindsight, and it just
Hmm.
evolved into so many different little techniques, so many different ways to handle the human terrain. Um, so that it actually has become a way that a lot of therapists view their practice, like almost like an orientation
Hmm.
to how they, like a lens through which they view the world. It's like some of them would say, I don't know how I've ever done or conducted a therapeutic session without incorporating some sort of EMDR language. It's like
Interesting.
that prominent in the field.
That's awesome.
It's been changing, game changing for me. Absolutely.
I mean, it sounds like it makes so much sense. I mean, I've done talk therapy. That's the only form of therapy I've done. Very helpful for me. But part of it, I think, is you're doing a lot of guessing. And maybe this sounds like a way to kind of break through that, similar to like psychiatrics. It's like guessing, guess, 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 guess. But now they have some stuff where you could take a test and this is supposed to be better for you than other things. It just
Mm.
sounds like another way to be a little bit more direct, like, cut all the like I said, the guessing. Like, was it this? Was it your mom? Was it your grandma?
Yeah. Yeah, that's such an interesting point of view to take. Instead of, we would say, like, suggesting, right? So like the
Sure.
therapist and talk therapy would do a lot of like, do you think it's,
Mm-hmm.
is the connection? Because I remember you saying a couple weeks ago, is the connection here? What I love about more of these experiential therapies, and especially EMDR, and actually brain spotting is very similar.
Okay.
Brain spotting isn't the bilateral stimulation that's tactile so much as it's audible.
Okay.
So it's music going from left to right ear, and then you're using your gaze, like staring off into space, like almost like a purposeful daydream
Okay.
to scan the brain to see what's coming up. But what I love about it is it puts the healing onto the client. So it's empowering. There's
Mm.
agency there. There's encouragement. There's confidence in the client now that they have their own answers. They've been there all along, and so it really takes just the clinician to be trained enough to steer them in a way that they already know. And all information is information.
Mm-hmm.
If they say nothing, still information. If their body's doing something, still information. It's all good information
Mm-hmm.
to reflect back to the client, who then gets to kind of piece together their own story.
It's very interesting. Is there any
Yeah.
other like you say experiential, not experimental,
Yeah.
like experiential treatments that you've done or are you doing your practice?
Just for the two, just brain spotting and EMDR. So it's very much like a sensational practice or an intervention. So it's like, what is the body feeling? What are we unlocking with that? Or what do we make of the cringe in the left part of your neck, or what's up with the fact that there's a lot of heavy sensation in the forehead? But the other ones that I'm interested in, I'm stoked to start working. I've got a couple hits on people that have attached to the fact that I'm big into video games. And so part of the experiential therapy there would be, how do I incorporate how they're playing in a game, or what games they're playing, to provide some sort of perspective into their experience.
Huh. I get that. So like why they're choosing that type of escape, kind of?
Either that, or, in my mind, it's what character are you choosing? And why are you choosing that character? Or it's like, if it's a more open world game, the way in which they interact with the world. What are they reenacting through the way that they're messing around with the NPCs versus the enemies versus, how are they completing goals? How are they accomplishing objectives? I
feel like I just had like, it's like honestly, like one thought popped in my head. So like I honestly, like, I'll hop on and play like Call of Duty, typically just to like hang out with my buddies who are like actually into the game, and I just kind of play. But sometimes I'm just trying to survive.
Yeah.
Which it's like, holy shit. Sometimes I am just trying to survive. Like, it's just like, you know how it is. Like, all right, we're playing Call of Duty. It's like, all right, I'll just live so you guys can come back and redeploy, and I'll just stay alive. And I remember I say it all the time, like, no, I'm just good at surviving. Fuck, man. It's deep shit. I realized I was.
You're just camping. It's a legitimate strategy.
Yeah, right, exactly. Very, very, very cerebral.
Yeah. No. You just gotta take control of the power weapons, man. Make sure if it's Halo, you gotta make sure the overshield's up.
Exactly. It's just strategy.
Just strats. You're keeping watch of a sight line, dude. You're just making sure that you got the choke.
Exactly. Hey, so what's up? Why did you? I mean, what got you in? So it sounds like you didn't really realize that you had your own struggles with mental health until recently. But you've been. I mean, you don't just become a therapist overnight. I mean, you've been going to school for a very long time. Why did you get into this field?
Whew. Isn't that something? Well, it's like you ask. No, that's huge. That's so great. Because it's like, where do you start? Mm-hmm. If I were to start telling my story in the first time I realized that I could positively influence somebody's life, that would have been like 2011. 2011, I was a camp counselor for Camp Lincoln for boys.
Okay.
And I had two big instances where I felt like I was doing something good for people. One of the kids, he was 10 years old. It was a 10 to 12-year-old cabin group. And I mean, almost every day he was in crisis. And I was like, this is pretty reasonable. The camp is 4 weeks long and he's 10 years old. So he's here for 4 weeks under our care.
Yeah.
Right. Homesickness. What else is there? It's like, people are bullying him. Maybe. I don't know.
Right.
Doesn't like the food. Doesn't find any activities that are in everything's feasible here. Mm-hmm. It turns out that it was so unfortunate. He had wet the bed like night one. I had forgotten to check. At 10 years old, 4 weeks. Damn. With that, and he kept. And you know what he was doing? Symptom management. He was covering it up, and so that vulnerable state. And now he's realizing that he's feeling that he's all alone, powerless. But I spent 4 weeks. Anytime he was in a crisis, I was with him. Yeah. And it was like, dude, let's go over here. Let's do this. And then we got him to a point where he could hang out for the rest of the day. Maybe it's making a candle. Let's dip into the candle shed. Sure. Let's figure out what crazy shit we can make.
Right.
I bet you can't use this Frisbee, pass it through 3 trees. And we would do that for 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. And at the end of when I finally made the realization, it was because after 4 weeks, I had to do the laundry one last time and help them so they can pack up and leave. Mm-hmm. And after seeing that, I actually didn't get a chance to see him and say goodbye. He had gotten his parents to get him out of there as quickly as possible, but he left a note. And it was, "You have no clue how grateful I am for how much you helped me. I can't express. And just, thank you." One of those kind of notes. And I was like,
Wow.
I thought I was failing, dude. I was like, dude,
Yeah.
I was in crisis with him.
Mm-hmm. 10 years old too. I couldn't
So
even
there
imagine
was that
writing
instance.
something like that at 10 years old.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Wow. So you
Must have
felt
been
like you had
pretty
like a call.
profound.
Yeah. So you felt like you had kind of a calling at that point.
At that point, the
Mm-hmm.
next one was the camp was split off into two groups, red and blue team. And at the end of every 4 week session, the seniors of the whole camp, the 16-year-olds, would like be nominating captains. So there was the captain of the red team and all 300 of those campers. And then there was the captain of the blue team and all 300 of those campers. 600 total, huge camp. And I was responsible for sort of supervising, mentoring, in our cabin, a very select few. It was like sharing the responsibility across the other camp counselors. And within my little pod, both of the captains came from there. And I was like, yo, okay, so all the times that I'm debriefing all the days,
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking with these people, and it culminates in them leading a whole, 300 person army, going through all these little different activities, trying to beat in the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember watching them because the last event is after everyone's trying to, it's like if you're on the red team and you and I are at the rifle range, I have to make 4 bullseyes before you make 4. And once I make my 4, I run to the next activity and I tag the next person and they start their activity. Get up the wall as fast as possible. And so the faster they get through all their activities, the sooner they get to their captain who's building a fire at the very end. And the fire has got to burn high enough and hot enough to burn through a rope about 3.5 to 5 feet above the top of the pit. And so this whole color war, they would call it, culminates in the entire camp, 600 kids looking at these two captains as they're building up the fire, and we're all cheering the fire on as it goes higher and higher to burn this rope. And I felt proud.
It's awesome.
I felt proud. And I was like, dude, this is something.
Yeah.
You got into coaching from there, and then from coaching became like, what if I had more influence in an area? So that became like, what if it was mental health counseling? What if it was sports psychology? And that's kind of where I'm at with it. It just kind of evolved from there.
It's amazing. I feel like I guess I can see where you got your inspiration to do something like that, because that's kind of where I was. And I was coaching. When I got into coaching, it had nothing to do with the volleyball. It was the rewards you get from the, working with the kids, the off the court stuff. And when I was done, because of career, it was like I needed an outlet to try to help. And like that's where all this came, part of where Anxious Ambition came from. It's like I just feel like I can help someone, even if it is one person with mental health. It's like I just got to put it out there. So it's like that coaching mentor type feeling that you had, because those letters you get, like you remember getting like, it's just like it's worth every ounce of effort, because let's be honest, coaching, it's not, you're not going to be paying the bills with it if you're doing what I don't know. It was like extra money. So
yeah.
Right. But it's a reward.
Yeah, shoot. And you're tasked with you got the kids you got the athletes for 2 hours. Like, what are you really going to do with them?
Right.
You make them superstars. Well, what if you used it to teach them more than just the game? It kind of sounds like you were doing, because you were coaching at Ultimate, right?
Yeah, I was coaching for Ultimate for, it must have been 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
I was doing some high school stuff too. And I just remember.
Which high school?
I was at Lincoln Way East for a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. I was there for a little bit. And I just remember seeing kids having their own struggles and me knowing it's anxiety or it's depression. But when I was in high school, I didn't know what the hell was going on. I just thought I was nervous or, just sad, and it's like, I just remember telling them, hey, I deal with these things. I'm not saying you are, but like, if you ever want to talk about it, come talk to me. I don't care. You see me, and I would tell them like, hey, do you think I have anxiety? It's like, I do, or I deal with depression. Like, anyone can deal with it. You could be dealing with it. And it's okay. Just kind of being like that support, because
Yeah.
I know it's no fault to my parents or anyone else's parents, but they didn't grow up learning about this stuff. It's
Yeah.
still, it's new. And it's like, hey, if you don't want to tell your parents, I'm happy to talk to you as long as it's nothing too serious, and we'll get you help. So
Oh, totally. I mean,
yeah,
our parents, they were doing the best they knew how.
absolutely. Right.
100%.
Right.
And we are learning that we are needing a little bit more. And so
Mm,
here's our journey, right?
right.
And you're providing yourself as the role model that
Mm,
they could potentially relate to on a different level that they could relate to their parents. It's supplementary. It's complementary to the caregiver's effort, right? And
right.
so 100, yeah, you offered that. Oh my gosh, I bet you they loved you. You
You know,
know?
it's like, I've gotten so, like, I still in contact with some of these kids just because of that connection, because it's being open and vulnerable and not just being like, hey, I'm the drill sergeant, I'm your boss. Like, dude, this is the threes team. You guys aren't that good. You're not that good. Let's learn life, have some fun.
Yeah.
And if it is almost like that cool uncle role, or like just your uncle, big brother, like type vibe. And that's what I miss the most about coaching. It wasn't the games. It wasn't, practice, practice. Kids didn't want to be there. We didn't want to be there.
No,
So,
yeah, no,
so sometimes, but
sure, sure. But it was like, oh, it was your community. It was like your little family, and they were
mm-hmm,
all there to relate, and there was healing in the relation. It
mm-hmm,
was something they look forward to. It's like, yes, I get to go be in a space where I'm seen, I'm heard,
yeah,
I'm validated, which potentially they didn't realize they needed until they came and hung out with you.
mm-hmm, yeah,
I like that thing that you were saying about the vulnerability.
mm,
That's very much something that I've realized is probably the biggest influencer, the biggest contributor to the influence that I can have as
mm-hmm,
a person, like whether it be a therapist or a coach or just um, in any position of power, right? Like my
right,
privilege is going to gain this if I was using my vulnerability to relate and meet people where they're at. There's more to be gained through that relationship. There's more growth. It's more empowering for the other person
mm,
than if I were to assume this, fuck it, my way or the highway kind of mentality. And like, who am I to say that?
right. That's true. It's
Yeah.
it's true.
Who
And
am I to abuse that?
it makes you relatable. It makes you not like feel like a phony. Like for me, like I don't have any certifications, nothing like that. I just tell my story because sometimes like I tell people, they're like, oh, I don't know, I can't help, I'm not in this position. But it's like, okay, but you could be one step ahead of Joe Blow or
Mm.
someone else, and that can be enough. That could be like, people are asking me how to start a podcast. Like, dude, it, I'm not doing anything special. I'm not, but I guess one step ahead of someone else, right? I'm not Joe Rogan, but but you're not Dr. Phil, you know what I mean? Or like,
Sure, right, yeah.
right,
Bruce Perry. I'm not.
sure,
Yeah,
sure. But
I.
you're
Yeah.
still absolutely making a difference and an impact.
It's like that. Just that understanding that like I'm going to continue to grow. I'm going to continue to educate,
Mm-hmm.
and with that comes humility. And it's like carefully realizing how the ego will get me into trouble, recognizing my place, and realizing that like through all of that, there's a lot of good I can do to help build people up around me. And like I'm not gonna be that superhero, even though maybe my super ego, right, would say like, oh yeah, you got to do all of it. You got to just, it has to be one way. It's got to be all or nothing. No, it's like within my own little circle, I'll do the best that I can. I'm going to do good work. There we go. I'm going to do good work. And if that ends up helping the person next to me, that's the vibe right there.
100%.
Yeah.
So talking about sports, I mean, with MOD Volleyball, how did you become? I mean, I was looking at your resume. It seemed like you had little stops at being, this mental performance in some way, shape, or form coaching. How did you get to the role you're at now with MOD?
I had this vision that like, and maybe this is where a lot of it stems for me, is like, who did I want to be coached by? Like when I was younger, who was it that I was looking for? What did little Rob need from a coach? And then I realized that it wasn't a lot about like the skill stuff. I went through the sports performance program, then I went through Ultimate, and how I chalk it up is I learned everything under the sun about that skill. And there's only so much you can do with that skill. You see the top athletes at any age group and just look at the mechanics. Not even the top athletes. If you just look at the mechanics of volleyball, they look the same from the youngest to the to the top pros. Yeah. The arm swing generally the same, the pass generally the same. We all form the same shape with our hands with the set. All the mechanics, those motor. But what separates is like, what's the spiritual? What's the emotional? What's the mental side of this? And I was like, so is it coaching, Rob? Or is it really about making sure that those conversations are had in an environment that you're passionate about? So I go to Derek Jensen and Chris Berzins. Chris Berzins assumes the boys director at the time. Derek Jensen is still the owner of Division I Volleyball Club when it was D1. And I, talk with Paris McFall out there and on the girls' side, and I say, hey, y'all, can I just coach? Because I got to do something while I'm in school. And then from there, it's like, hey, I'm noticing that, like, coaching, sweet. I know the game. We're getting some success here. There's an opportunity here for these other 3 areas of life to be talked about. And I have to do 400 hours. I've got 100 or 200 hours of direct client contact, 150 of observation, 50 of supervision to log before I can be certified as a certified mental performance consultant. Could D1 be my site? They're like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, what if I just came in and ran like activities, team building, taught mental skills to the volleyball athletes? They're like, okay, let's toss the spaghetti at the wall, see what sticks kind of deal. Yeah. It started with the boys' side. Chris Berzins, I got 30 minutes before practice to take 40 kids into a room and just teach them about breathing, teach them about how the heart works, how that affects performance, teach them about attentional focus, how to aim that attentional focus like an arrow, talk to them about confidence, where that comes from, like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Necessary things.
Yeah.
Very necessary.
And why is it that we're missing that dig? Is it that you don't know how to dig a volleyball? Probably not. What if it's because the eyes are not attending to the right thing at the right time? Or what if it's that you're just freaking yourself out and you just have so much information and it's overloaded? How can we recognize that out of ourselves? Then we go to the girls program, and then from there it just grows. I was like talking to Derek, talking to Chris, like, hey, this year I want to do this. Could I get team by team as opposed to, 40 kids? Can I get 10 in a group? This would be more conducive to the type of learning we're trying to. And from there, it was just like, I've got the hours. What if this was a site for more interns to come in on a yearly cyclical basis? And so that's where we're at right now is I've got this role where I'm coaching up the coaches so that the coaches can best facilitate their athletes, what to look for, how to facilitate intrinsic motivation through a good team culture, what to do with debriefing, what to do with front-loading information, how to give feedback. And I've got we're working on a website right now, but then it's like, okay, how do I touch base with these interns from Emdr University so that they can now conduct those sessions? and I'll get new interns on a yearly basis, and they'll go through this cycle where they start with the boys program, go on to the girls program, finish out with the girls and the boys in that summer, rinse and repeat. And we're just going to keep building this thing as the programming for the the mental, emotional, spiritual side of sport. As long as MOD now, because it's MOD, right? As long as MOD Volleyball allows me,
It's incredible, man. Like, I'm just thinking, I'm thinking about, first of all, congratulations on even, because honestly, when I was looking through your LinkedIn, I'm like, all right, I'm pretty sure he made this roll up. In a good way though. I was like, because I've never heard of that role being in club volleyball. You got your strength and conditioning coach who just runs you into the ground and does all that shit. Honestly, yeah, you know how that is. But like what you said, it's like, I mean, I remember taking my kids, the team at the time, we did like a guided meditation, but like they were just like, "What the hell are you doing right now?" And it was like, "All right, cool." We tried like guided, like manifest. We tried like manifesting before the games and doing that type of stuff, and then that helps. But it was like the kids that clicked with it really clicked, But and it's no offense to where I was at, but they were like, "Hey, you can't be spending like an hour of our 2-hour practice not on the court." It's like, all right, makes sense. Right? Yeah. Makes sense. Fair.
2 hours of practice.
Right. Exactly. So, but like, I can just, the amount of benefits, because truthfully too, I think from our age, when we played to now, the distractions are up. These kids are dealing with more and more, is it social skills? They're all on their phone, technology. Like even like myself today, like I can, if I were to get on the court, it would be totally different. Like the distractions of life and everything. It's something like this would be extremely beneficial. And I commend you in making it happen, because I mean, you did the work. You created the role.
Thanks, man. Yeah. And something that we're adapting with too, like during the pandemic.
Yeah.
We would do, like Mondays, 5 to 6. It's like anybody that want to join. So like the intern that I was working with at the time, or Kramer, who's also an LPC, he and I were like, okay, first of all, we're freaking out because it's the pandemic. What does that mean for us? But then, like, how do we provide the same stuff that we were providing previously, but also take into consideration that we're all in this collective trauma together, and how do we make this worthwhile for and now Zoom's a thing. Right. Because we had the kids during the pandemic on Zoom. Now it's like sometimes we're not even on the court, and sometimes it's both. Sometimes we're hanging out with the kids, the athletes, and we're running skills sessions on the court, and then we're touching base over Zoom for 30 minutes. Oh, wow. And you know what I'm saying? And it's definitely we've adapted. We've adapted. Sammy Mizak and Maddie Repak are the two current interns for our boys program, and have done amazing work with getting these kids to really think about what it means for them to succeed. And they just competed against the best of the best at the Winter Classic, the Winter Championships, the MKE tournament at McCormick Place. Okay. And we're getting top 5s, man. Wow. We're getting second place. We're getting top 10s.
Hell yeah.
So, hey, we're growing, dude. We're growing.
That's awesome. Do you get feedback from the kids?
A little bit here and there. A lot of it's like, so we're developing not what I wanted to say. We are looking to incorporate, as we grow, assessment measures.
Sure.
How are the sessions? What would you like to see improved? What do you like about them? What don't you like? So very basic to start, to grow into what maybe has changed from start to finish, so that we can measure maybe effectiveness of either the consultant or both the consultant and how they're translating onto the court. So right now it's just word of mouth, talking with coaches, talking with athletes, but we'd love to evolve into this place where we've got like some sort of data, because that becomes something we write up, man. We could write that up, review board, we can get it published. That might be the 5-year plan, though. It might be speaking a little ahead of myself.
Speaking into existence, though, right?
Ooh, manifested. I got
Hell
you.
yeah.
I'm here.
Hell yeah.
I'm here
Do
with
you
you.
did you guys ever like do you guys touch on like things like anxiety or things like mental health related type things
Every
or
once in a while, yeah.
yeah.
Anxiety tends to be huge, especially around tryout season.
Mm,
So like a couple weeks before tryouts, into tryouts, and then the lead up to big tournaments was also a big point of contention. What we've talked about a lot is how anxiety narrows attentional focus. So either we've got that tunnel vision, or how anxiety kind of gets us into this place of freeze because we're taking way too much in.
yeah.
So we've either got the ruminating thoughts, or we've got that just way too much information at once, and how that freezes the player. So we've talked through like maybe some cognitive reappraisals. So like, yeah, this is a really anxious event for you, and you feel like you can't, and now you're feeling like you can't make any serve. Like I can't make my serve during this match. Turns into I can't make my serve today.
Mm,
Turns in I can't. I've never been able to make my serve. I just suck right now.
yeah.
The rumination, the circling down the drain. So rephrasing some of that into opportunities is something we've been working through. Okay, but what's your opportunity right now?
Mhm.
If serving's not necessarily going well for you, how could we rephrase that we're going to miss to an opportunity for you? Well, I guess maybe it's an opportunity for me to work on my jump float. It's like, yeah, 100%. Maybe
Absolutely.
zone one's not working. So what are we going to? Well, let's go to
Right.
zone six. Zone six is comfortable. We can trust the team to play some defense, right?
Yeah.
So a little bit of that, but then it's also like self-awareness of like, where are you holding that?
Yeah.
I feel it's in my stomach. It's in my chest. It's in my throat.
Yeah.
Right? And then it's like, okay, so what sort of breathing, self-soothing, maybe some tapping?
Yeah.
What sort of like routine can we get into to desensitize that anxiety, to take it from the arbitrary 8 intensity down to a 4 or a 3, so we're into this space where we can compete, as opposed to just whatever they would do, fight, flight,
Right.
freeze.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Man, it makes me think of man, it makes me think of so I've talked about it before, but when I first started noticing my anxiety was around sport. Unfortunately, it was around rituals with sports, which
Mm.
I honestly think is a bigger problem than maybe people lead on. I mean, athletes can be very, you know, very strict on their rituals. And I remember, it started obsessive compulsive disorder is where I think it all kind of started with me when it comes to like
Mm.
that type of thing. So it was like, okay, tie your shoes a certain way. Okay, now you got
Sure.
to do this. And then it's like, looking back, it's like, holy shit, like I was doing all these things that were distracting me from the game, but also it turned into real life. It's like, okay,
Mm.
now I got to do this during the day, not just sport. It's not just bouncing the ball 3 times. If you don't do it right, you're going to miss your serve. It became life. And I think that's something too with like we. I remember when I was coaching, people were like, be very strict with rituals. I'd be like, just try to nip in the bud. Be like, hey, it's okay. Like, don't well, it's not that serious when it comes to a ritual because I just try to nip that habit in the butt before it became something that grows into obsessive compulsive disorder, things like that.
Yeah. They do, man, that is
Isn't it crazy to think about though? I got all these athletes, professional athletes with these rituals that if they don't do it right, things are going to go bad. And that's a little deeper rooted than just a ritual.
yeah, they it's as affecting to them as any other kind of life event because it is life.
Mm-hmm.
This what like you're 14 and you're at a tournament, the only thing you're thinking about, well, hopefully, maybe from a coach's eye, is your performance, right? But it's like,
Sure.
I don't want to mess it up for the team. I don't want to be the reason why we lose. I don't want to like we at that age, it's really easy for us to make these demands out of ourselves. Like it's got to be, it has to be.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what? Right? And it's like,
Right.
well, everyone's gonna hate me.
Right.
I can't play the sport anymore. I can't show my face. I can't. Right? I see that. I honestly, I see that a lot. But rightfully so in some capacity because
Sure.
you know that is a lot of their identity.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of their identity is,
Yeah.
I'm this volleyball player. I am a setter.
Yeah.
Like,
Did you?
what's up?
I was gonna say, did you have any identity issues after being like life after sports?
Oh man, still do very much. In
Yeah.
fact, I didn't. It took until actually, um, it took until maybe September of last year, I want to say, where I really switched my focus in the weight room.
Mm.
In the weight room, it had always been about, let's get the knees back so I can jump. Let's get the arms going so I can swing.
Yeah.
And it's like, what am I training for? I mean, I'm 31 now. I was 30 last year. Like, what the hell am I training for?
Yeah.
Maybe so I can smack the ball a little harder during, like, some adult rec threes, or okay, all right, all right. Um, so very much still navigating my life outside of volleyball, because I'm not coaching this year. I'm a part-time assistant coach at Dominican
Okay.
University,
Okay.
but even there I'm doing a lot more of the mental performance stuff than I am the coaching stuff. So this is the first season I don't have a club team.
Yeah.
This is the first, or two club teams. Sometimes I'll take two and then maybe assist on a third. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I've got a single private lesson now, as opposed to trying to fill up the week with 5, 8.
Yep.
And I'm not trying to play 4 times a week, 5 times a week. And
Right.
it's tough. It's like, where's my outlet now?
Yeah.
Where's my
Now
outlet?
you're
And
helping
who
the
am
youth
I?
though. You're helping the youth though.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
it's true though. There's always, you have that connection with volleyball that, and you're still helping the youth, like you said, with coaching, with the performance side. Um, I got a question about you about just therapy in general. What do you think about
Sure.
what do you think about these services like BetterHelp and I think Talkspace? You know what I'm talking about? Like
Are
where
those,
it's
I'm
like,
unfamiliar.
okay, so basically you can it's affordable therapy, but the caveat is, sometimes it's only through health, which has definitely become a thing now. But like when I did
Hmm.
it, honestly, it was just through like a messenger. It was like
Oh,
it was almost like me and you just texting back and forth. Um, and to be honest with you, a lot of like influencers are pushing it because it's like they're giving people, like, they're paying people to promote it, right? Um,
okay.
yeah, I mean, I was curious if you had an opinion on it. I mean, for me, it wasn't it. I'm not gonna say it wasn't helpful because it was the first kind of therapy I did where it kind of got me through the
Sure.
door. But really, it was just like it felt like I was just Googling questions. Like it didn't feel like it was any real connection. So I guess my question to you
Right.
is, on a therapy standpoint, like, do you think whether it's through telehealth and like seeing people, because that's important, even if it's not physically, even just like through Zoom like this, like reading the reactions
Yeah.
like that.
I actually just had a session over the phone with my own
Okay.
therapist, and it, as much as I love the information
Mm-hmm.
because of what he and I were working through for myself,
Mm-hmm.
I also missed the face-to-face connection. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking like in person. I'm just saying
Right.
seeing a face. Um, I think if we put stock into the fact that there's so much more, maybe the statistic is 90%. Let's just
Mm-hmm.
give it more than half of the meaning behind um, communication comes from the body language,
Yeah.
the intangibles, the nonverbal communications, which gives flavor to some of the deepest, um, some of the most intense spaces to hold emotions in. So like, I would advocate more for the face to face, whether it be telehealth or in person, more so than even the phone conversation, even though it kind of worked.
Mm-hmm.
We had a prior relationship.
Right. That's what I
To
was gonna
me,
say. Right.
yeah. I think there's that ability to hold space for somebody that really requires the nonverbals to come through, um, which we would see from, as long as there's a camera on. And then, the phone conversation, I believe, worked for me because we already had the prior relationship established through the face-to-face.
Mm-hmm.
And that's through, that is only telehealth between my therapist and I right now. And I don't feel, I think there's different unconscious dynamics at play if we're in person. Proxemics becomes a thing because now I'm physically 4.5 feet away from somebody. And that begets a different energy than knowing that you're, 30 miles away from me right now. And like, if I wanted to, like, I could just dip, and I'm in my room as opposed to like, I'm at a facility and I don't know where to go.
Sure. Okay.
So these online platforms, that was kind of my question, man. Did you feel like they held emotional space for you and they connected?
No.
They saw you? No. Okay.
And I think too, and I've talked to some people that are therapists, and like, I want to say this, I'm not going to like knock anyone for trying this stuff because it's starting the process. It's seeking help, right?
Yeah.
But what I want to say is, like, if you haven't had a good experience with it, like I didn't, don't think like therapy is just not for you. It's, there's so many other avenues, so many other therapists. Like I've heard they really, I mean, obviously it was cheap. So you're not, I mean, the quality of the therapist doesn't get paid that much. Your quality of help is, and that's kind of part of it. So it kind of leads into my next question is, if someone out there is struggling or is looking to start seeking therapy, what would you recommend? I mean, if they're nervous, I mean, it's definitely something that I don't think anyone the first time is like, oh, I can't wait to go to therapy. It could be, you don't want to face those things, or, what kind of advice would you give someone?
Sure. I think I'd like to start with this notion that, and I want to say, this is going to be bad. I know our ethical code, but like not to a T necessarily. So I'm not sure if it's written here. And if it is, then it's there. But if it's not, there's like this unspoken rule that therapists are like stewards of the profession. And so if you choose not to continue with me, that's going to be all right. You're going to go find your better fit. But hopefully it's because you're trying to find a better fit, or something different, or maybe circumstances had changed, and not because I had done wrong by you. So hopefully, like, in general, you've got a good taste from seeking a therapist after you've come see me. Which is where we commend, at least because, I'm very new to hearing about these two services, but that's where I would commend the therapists with those services, is they left you with a good taste for therapy in some capacity. You went to go seek additional help. So they did, when they opened that door, it wasn't to completely close it off for you. It was to realize that, you know what, I could use more, and I would want more, which is like, yes, thank you for that. They're doing something out there with those services.
That's true.
So to start, I went, because it's like, how did I find mine? I had gotten recommended after spending an inordinate amount of money at this training. So I'm not going to say, go spend $1,200 for this training for the supervisor to come down and say you should go see my friend. But Psychology Today helps. Start with people in your area and try it out, trial run, and see if they've got referrals for you. And then just be upfront and honest with those people, knowing that as an unspoken rule, they're trying to do the best by you. And so if it isn't you seeing them for 4 years and it's only a couple sessions, hopefully they're leaving you with like, I got 3 friends that I know would be better suited, I think. Go, shoot them a call and see what you come up with. And so sort of putting the journey back to, or the onus back onto the person, which could be tough.
Yeah.
Especially for a depressive episode, a little hopeless. And it's all like, fuck, if that didn't work, then what did? But hopefully there's this sense of like, I think I can, and I will try, and I'll have these phone conversations.
I like that.
So maybe just, the Psychology Today, the quick Google around your area first, maybe friends of family friends, however that works.
Yeah.
who's in your circle, and then trusting in the profession to go find the help for you.
I like that. Yeah. I tell people
Yeah.
too, like it's, and I've talked to some people, like I got lucky, my therapist, we connected right away, but it's just like any relationship. I mean, I know there's that barrier. It's not really a relationship per se, like a friendship, but it is a very vulnerable, place that you go. And if you can't connect with that person, and not because they're a good person, but like there's plenty of people out there that I don't connect with just in general, and likewise, right?
Yeah.
Um, but just like what I tell people is like, hey, if you got a friend that you're similar to and they've got a great therapist, there's a chance that you would connect with them as well. Like using, like you
Yeah.
said, talking to your friends, being vulnerable. I think it all comes back to that: be vulnerable, talk to people, and just look around. How about, and I kind of know the answer, but how just to hear from an actual therapist, if
Sure.
someone can't afford your standard therapy, there's options out there, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And actually, so I had seen a talk therapist before I was seeing Vito.
Mm-hmm.
John Higgins and Carter is solid. I think the cool thing about them was they were willing to work with my budget.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you'll find the therapists that have more of a social justice sort of standpoint where they're not out there for collecting the big paychecks. There's certainly therapists that will do that. They got their own hustle,
Mm-hmm.
but there are enough of us out there who've got that sliding scale because they
Right.
realize that, like, listen, everybody could use this.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we gatekeeping? Who am I to, look at me,
Right.
white male, you and I, right?
Right.
We're the white males. We are, our privilege could mean that you and I, like, I would go to the richest parts here and charge $700 a session,
Yeah.
but that's not my jam.
Mm-hmm.
Let me operate with that sliding scale and get the people that truly need the help that haven't been getting that help. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? So I think there's enough
Absolutely.
of us out there that would work with financial situations like
Oh,
that.
absolutely. It's glad to hear
Yeah.
it from a therapist. I've been preaching that for a while because that's an excuse you hear right away. It's, oh, I can't afford it, which is probably just something more like you don't want to face your shit. But
Yeah.
like, and then you'd be like, well, no, you could afford it because
Mhm.
I couldn't afford it when I went 6 years ago, or whatever. But she was like, hey, you just pay me $40. Does that work? Or whatever it was. And like, okay, yeah, that works for me. She's like,
Yeah.
and just, if you can't afford that, like, it's fine too. Because like you said, it's not people that, well, the therapist you want to work with isn't someone that's just out there for the money. You want someone that's out
Mm.
there that's going to look at to help people, and the money
Yeah.
will come. Like the money comes. It's not like it's one session is going to make or break.
Right.
So it's good to hear it from an actual professional, because I always say, like, don't make that your excuse.
Yeah.
There's priests. There's always someone that can fit your needs, to get the help that you need.
Yeah. It's like you would never want your parents to charge you for the attachment they've got with you, right? So like your parents, caregivers,
Mm-hmm.
the best case scenario is there's secure attachment between you two. They're not asking you for $40 every time they come give you some help with your
Right.
homework, $50, right?
Right.
Um, Likewise, that the therapist very much operates under this professional standard of providing secure attachment for the people that necessarily didn't get that and needed that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, exactly. If you can't afford the standard rate based on insurance or whatever kind of coverage or whatever the initial offering is, you want somebody that's going to slide with you because that ultimately speaks to the quality of relationship that you're going to have with that therapist and ultimately go deeper and find better healing in my opinion through that secure attachment
Right.
with people like that, professionals like that.
I like that. All right, so we got a couple more questions before we kind of wrap it up. One thing I wanted to ask
Sure.
you is, how do you, and I always think about this with therapists, how do you deal with, with hearing, your sessions, you're hearing other people's problems, their issues. How do you not have that affect your mental health? Or do you?
Actually,
Harder
yeah,
than,
no,
yeah.
well, it does.
Yeah.
The term in the field is vicarious trauma.
Okay.
It very much affects, because those are the thoughts that are swirling around in our head sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like replaying any kind of, depending on how we, I like how we evaluate that in our own brain, in terms of intensity for us, is sort of how troubling that becomes. And then that does affect, I would bring that into the next interaction with maybe my roommate
Mm-hmm.
or a romantic partner. And it's like, oh shit, sorry,
Yeah.
tough client today,
Mm-hmm.
didn't mean to bring that in. It's very similar to how the stress of the job might carry into the home life of
Mm-hmm.
like a 9 to 5, something like that. But so with that vicarious trauma, like Adler and other institutions and anyone training future clinicians
Mm-hmm.
would give you what we would call the self-care plan. Self-care plan's interesting. It's like, okay, it's not just self-care, right? It's not just, and I say that because like it's such a buzzword.
Yes.
It's such a freaking buzzword. But the way I look at it is through this article. I forgot the authors, but it's the article title is Creative Counselor Self-Care. I share it with my coaches. I share it with the other clinicians that become the interns at the mental performance program.
Okay.
And anyone that is looking for a more robust way to take care of themselves. And within the article, they describe this model. You've got the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual aspects of your life. Each one of those deserves care, needs the care. You can look at them maybe as like a battery, and they got to be recharged. You can look at them as like a bank. You got to deposit into that bank to make sure they're all topped off, because anytime you got an interaction with somebody, you're depleting some of that. Or anytime you interact or do anything, you're depleting some of that.
Mm-hmm.
From there, become your activities: physical activity, exercise, walk, tai chi, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Mental, is it about some of the thought stopping? Is it about maybe some of just the noticing of the thoughts? Is the mental more of like a brain game or a puzzle or something, stimulating in that sense? Is it a book? Emotional. Do we need the therapeutic sessions of our own? Do we need the good cry? Do we need the rage room? Do we need, you know what I mean? What do we do with our emotions? How do we take care of our emotional well-being? Is it through good, honest emotional connection with a significant other and just talking through that to get those out on the table so we can look at them? And then spiritual, is it the religion? Is it the meditation?
Mm-hmm.
Is it the Reiki? Is it a float tank? Right? Like, is it the yoga? Because that would also hit the physical.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's like they encourage you to go and have a set routine that does not falter week by week within those 4 categories. Monday, Wednesday, lift. Tuesday, Friday, yoga.
Sure.
Read a book for 30 minutes every night. That's it. Start small. Then they encourage you to go to the 5-minute quick fix. Okay, today's a shit day because something unexpected just happened, which is fine. That happens.
Mm-hmm.
What's the 5-minute thing that's going to keep you moving? Is it a quick walk around the building? Is it petting the dog?
Yeah.
Is it, like screaming a pillow?
Yeah.
Do it, man. Like the guitar's behind me. the guitar.
Something.
Play a little ditty and we're on it. And then lastly, it's preemptive. I know this week's going to be extra tough. What am I going to add to help with the extra tough week? And then surrounding this, brilliant model. Love it. Still use it. Always, well, now since I was enlightened, now I use it. In its professional development and connection. So make sure you've got some good supports in your network. So maybe it's the family, maybe it's the friends, maybe it's the coworkers, the colleagues, and then it's professional development. So let's continue to learn and grow and gain more perspective. And so that's kind of the gist there. Oh, and then it's about celebrating the wins. That's like the most important part in my world, because I don't celebrate the wins enough.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people do.
The small things, right?
Right. Okay. So that's good. I mean,
I'm
it's good. Yeah.
celebrating. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's
I was just,
kind of refreshing to hear. Go ahead. No, you finish your thought.
I was just gonna say I'm celebrating now all the times that I'm present fully,
Oof.
because part of my maladaptive escape is the dissociation.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm winning every time I find myself fully present. Which, so it's very unique and individualized to yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the steak dinner on a Friday. Maybe it's the quick game. The Rocket
Yeah.
League only takes 15 minutes, so celebrating with that
Hmm.
kind of deal. But yeah, we
Everyone's
were gonna.
different. Well, I was just gonna say, like,
Yeah.
it's kind of refreshing to hear too. It's like we're all people. We all have, like, we're not immune to having to take care of ourselves with self-care. Doesn't matter what profession
Hmm.
you're in. Just because you are, have your master's in this doesn't mean you're just immune to feeling these negative thoughts or, the anxiety that
Yeah.
comes with it and things like that. And but we mentioned about being present, man. Like I can relate to that completely. And I find myself though looking back and just being like so happy about those moments where I was present and like feeling like,
Mm.
okay, like this helps me be really present. Like these moments I'm being present. So I try to do more and more of those things. Um,
Yeah.
what are some of your what are some of your favorite like coping mechanisms, whether it's for you or to like, give on to your clients for dealing with anxiety and depression? Just something that
For
popped
me
to your head.
personally, it's like, no, yeah, totally cool. For me personally, it's like it's the lift
Mm,
is great for me. The walk outside is sweet for me. I'm playing. I'm big into video games, and I've recognized the games that I'm using to dissociate versus the games that I'm using for more of the enjoyment. So I'm
mm,
playing a little bit more skill demanding games because it keeps me more in the front, in the prefrontal
yeah.
cortex, just right, and I'm dialed in. Um, and then honestly, it's making those phone calls, those quick connects,
Hmm.
because it's like the world starts to pile in if I don't have anyone to share my world with.
Yeah.
So that's that. So for me personally, there, and easy, quick coping for clients. I've had clients needing to go treat themselves with a good meal, like a good, colorful, nutritional meal. And so to remind themselves that every once in a while, sometimes it's because of the gut health
Mm,
they're feeling this way, as opposed to everything being so much. Let's start eliminating some of the underlying cause
yeah.
potentially. And so a good healthy stomach, and now we can engage in some of the stuff we've been working on in session. For other times with clients, it's like, okay, and how many times a week are you connecting with this person that's been your outlet? And so it's like, can we add an additional time there, or can we add a little bit more time in the one time a week that you are connecting?
Hmm.
More in the moment stuff has been like dissociating, totally cool. What if we can bring ourselves to the present moment by trying to move our toes against the ground without moving any other toe? So I instruct them to go pinky toe against the ground without moving any other on the left
Hmm.
foot, all the way up to the left big toe, right big toe down to the right pinky, and on back. And you're finding yourself, I mean, I'm doing it right now. I can't do
Yeah.
it. Where
Right.
does it bring yourself? Right here, right?
Absolutely. Hmm.
Yeah.
Some
So,
great tips. It's great
yeah.
tips, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a big thing is when you're in these, let's just say anxiety and even depression, it's like you are so out of the moment. You are in the clouds of the darkness and stuff, but like getting yourself to be mindful and present is half the battle. And like what you said about the
Mm.
gut health and things like that, like it comes back to you still have to do the work and you have to give yourself the best chance to live mentally well. Like it's like the
Mm.
main thing we try to talk, like I talk about here, like I have anxiety, I have depression. Okay. That could be forever. And I'm okay with that. But if I don't, like, I'm taking actions every day to make sure that I have the best chance to live my best life, because those, like,
Mm.
it's not
Mm-hmm.
letting, and if I were to, anyone, if you just sit there and let it be and don't eat well or take the supplements you're supposed to take, exercise, like, you're going to be in the same shitty place you are right now. Like nothing's going to change. Even
Yeah.
going to therapy, I mean, it's great, but you still need to do other things.
Yeah. And it's like for some of my clients who are challenged with like getting started,
Mm.
sometimes it is as simple as maybe looking at the bed and or rearranging a room or doing something that signifies they're doing it for themselves, that sparks a little something in them that might be a little bit of joy, a little bit new perspective, but start small. Maybe it is making the bed.
Mm.
Maybe if it's something that we don't want to do, maybe we're putting on a podcast or putting on some sort of like music, so that it's almost like it adds a layer of distraction, but also a layer of joy to something that we're just dreading doing.
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah, to start small there so that we are giving ourselves a fighting chance, even with the worst cases, even with the cases that really just aren't, I would say, feeling like just numb,
Yeah.
just numb to everything. And then for them, it can be, we do have a decent hospital system, I would say. Finding the inpatient hospitalization that works for you. Sometimes just to check in and regulate some of the medications if we're going that route, or to acquire some more of the basic fundamental skills to keep us moving in our everyday life as we try to reintegrate into society. We hear some horror stories. We were in this hospital and some of the associates were using too much of the force to restrain or so many of the shots to keep people from beating up on each other. But, I worked at River Edge for a year during the pandemic. Okay. That was my way of making money. And I was a mental health associate, and I was handling. I was in charge of like basic needs. It was like I was giving out the food, helping people wake up, helping them get to group. I was in some cases breaking up some of the fights, but also like it was helping people when they were in crisis, reorient themselves, stay on their track. And so there are spaces in, especially our area, Cook County, that are there as the safety net before we plunge into an area where, maybe we are committing suicide, or maybe we are acting out in a homicidal way, very dangerous to self and others. And so there very much is that safety net around us, if the case is that, or if that's the case.
Right. Absolutely. Hey, so I got a couple more questions before we get into our last final questions. What's some advice you'd give someone that is looking to become a therapist or get into like the counseling field?
Good on them.
Yeah.
Hell yes.
Right.
Like we're entering this space where I think these generations are realizing how important it is to have at least a check-in. Sometimes it's every 2 weeks. Like I just need to talk to an unbiased third party just to check in with my life. And it becomes a lot of maintenance. All the way to what I just described of like, I can't operate unless I'm in a hospitalized setting. So with the future clinicians, it's like a celebration at that point. The advice is to celebrate yourself, because you're going into a field where the need is always going to be there, and not because we're trying to make the money, because you genuinely want to see the community around you heal, or the client, like the people around you be built up, which is like a community health approach there, which is, commendable. It's admirable. It's honorable. And the advice there is seek your own therapy. Figure out what it's going to be, what's going to mean to you, to dive deep with yourself so that you can then dive deep with your clients. I never called myself a fool in a diminishing way towards myself, but to think that I could be able to really help somebody without tackling my own life is a fool's errand. And so that would be the thing, is get used to going to seeing somebody for yourself, and that will open you up to being more available with your clients.
It's great advice, especially when you bring up like the empathy part, how do you, it comes back to like everything about being vulnerable. Like if I don't know you've done it or gone through it yourself, like why should I trust you? And and it's honestly going to make you a better, obviously better at what you're trying to do. I mean,
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's a lot of people that, I mean, like it makes me think of like when I went to the doctor the first time and it's like, oh, here's this medication. There's no side effects. I'm like, have you taken this? Well, no,
Yeah.
but I'm like, all right, it's like,
So yeah.
like, okay, well then how do you know? Like, you don't have to bullshit me. Like, but if you haven't taken it or you haven't experienced, the therapy, how, why can I trust you? And that's some great advice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's commendable. I every time I hear someone like become a therapist, it's like, wow, like we need you out, people like you out there. So first of all, I commend you for doing it as well. I know you put in a lot of work, a lot of education to get to where you are today too.
And it still goes.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's still that's the fall in love with the process
Mm-hmm.
is sort of also kind of a buzz thing to say, but
It's true though.
it's yeah, right. It's I was just talking to somebody about how Michael Phelps has got this interview where someone asked him if he would like how he would feel if he got second place.
Mm-hmm.
Train for 4 years and you go in and you get the silver medal. And for him, it's like, it just is. It just is what it is because what he's fallen in love with, Justin, is he's fallen in love with the process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he goes, he competes. He's really good at what he does, so he gets his golds. And if it was a silver for him, it would just be like, shit, okay, well, let's continue to do what I love for the next 4 years so I can go come to the next Olympic Games and go kill it there.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the budding therapist, it's fall in love with the educational process. I'm picking up books. You just sent me a book.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've got my reading list, and I'm looking for that professional development piece.
Absolutely.
That's what keeps us moving.
Yeah, I think just in general, like if you need to continue to educate yourself, it doesn't end when school. I mean,
Right.
honestly, if in my opinion, like education started when school was over. Because just from
Fair point.
like high school, that education is more like social skills and things like that. But like, if you want to go do big things, you need to start educating yourself and be committed to it. Education over entertainment sometimes is a big thing.
Yeah.
Don't just be a vegetable on the couch and expect to be doing what you want to do. It comes back to our message of, even though you've struggled with mental health, it doesn't mean that that's what's going to define you and not allow you to chase your dreams. Like you just have to work harder and you got to go after it. Speaking of that, I mean, do you have any goals for yourself?
Whew. 2022 is the year that I'm coming into my own, man. So I've got like a financial goal. And so for me, it's about creating a living for myself.
Sure.
This will be the first time in my life that I've made more than $25,000 a year, which is going to be, whoo.
Oh, yeah.
Coaching makes what coaching does,
Yes. Yes.
So that's going to feel solid. Financial goals, I think, are very tangible, but coming into my own is also understanding that my body tells me and my brain tells me things that are true. It's like my truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so my goal is to really identify when I'm not speaking my truth and attach to when I am and be speaking more of my truth this year so that I'm really, taking care of self.
Mm-hmm.
So I can be the best. Well, so I can just be more me.
Yeah. Right.
As opposed to wherever the expectations have pulled me.
Sure. Yeah. Take the mask off and be exactly who you are.
Yeah.
And then you can do whatever you want because you're not trying to appease anyone.
Which I'm now reflecting. It's not I teach at MOD, right? We're smart goals are always a thing. That's definitely not a smart goal. So if the MOD people are watching, I'm sorry, but like I swear there's some measurable things in here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hey, so let's go back to, I think you said it was like November. You started realizing that the depressive episodes were more than just being sad around, being seasonal.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give yourself?
Oh, if I could look at myself back then, huh?
Yeah.
There's this concept that I'm just learning now called dukkha, Duhhka. It's Buddhist. It's
Okay.
being able to sit with the unsettledness.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very much me feeling unsettled and the grapple with I should be, or and then the anxiety over I'm not right now. So I should be doing this, should be doing that. Why isn't this happening? And then anger and then frustration at myself because it's not. And then it's just this ruminating, just freeze that I would put myself in.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, why am I getting up, man? Why am I getting up? But with dukkha, it's the nothing is still something. And there's agency there. There's agency in the unsettledness. If I lean into it, what am I going to do for myself now? Not for 3 weeks from now, not for a month from now, but like, what is the direct need in this moment? And if I were to recognize that's just something that's happening with me, then how do I be all right with just sitting here? Could I give myself the time to relax? Could I give myself the time to enjoy a movie or a video game or hang out with friends? Do I always have to be working? You know, to feel fulfilled, to feel like I'm doing something right, like.
Absolutely.
So that's what I would tell myself, dude. It's something. Nothing is still something. It's all right to just be, and to allow myself that would have just. I mean, the relief, the weight off my shoulder, or both shoulders, or my body. That would have been so helpful.
We could all use that advice, man. Could all use it. You know, we think we need to be doing something every second. It's just the world we live in, you know, but rest or doing nothing could be amazing. Could be exactly what you need.
The white American capitalist machine tells us you're not doing enough. And also, fuck you.
Yeah. And I work harder than you, dude. Like,
God, what?
Who cares?
Yeah.
God.
Listen, I'm gonna go. You know, like I'm just gonna go take a walk. I got to take the dogs out. I'm gonna go and enjoy this apple. You do you.
Right. Exactly. Oh man. All right. So before we get into our last question, how can people find you? Whether it's to work with you or just connect.
I love it. I have a Psychology Today profile, Rob Samp. And I'm also working at Labyrinth Counseling and Consulting. Okay. So if you want to work with me on a clinical front, those are the two ways to find me. And you know what? If people are looking to reach out, you can reach me through an email address, if that's cool to drop here.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's samprj01@gmail.com. And if it's looking for a point of connection, I am more than happy to steer you in the right direction.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So last question.
Sure.
How do you want to be remembered, Rob?
Oh, shoot. I want to be remembered for doing good work, man.
Yeah.
For doing good work. Like, you know what? I was happy with the time I spent. Maybe not happy, but it was meaningful the time I spent with that guy. Would be nice to be remembered, Okay. How little or how long, whatever it is.
Simple, but I love it. Hey, first, I just want to say thank you for coming on today. Thanks for being vulnerable. Thanks for being, in the space you're in. I mean, what you're doing with the athletes is, you see it happening like college, professional level, but to me, the more important thing is the youth. It's not that we're fucking 60 years old, but like the youth, these kids in high school and going into college, like they're the target audience for all of this, where they can make the change for the next generation. And you're definitely a part of that. So thank you for that. Thanks for coming on today. And I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate you giving me this space. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I appreciate it. Thanks to everyone for listening today. If you're struggling and you're thinking about going into therapy, I've talked about it before. It's accessible for everybody. Don't make it your excuse where you can't afford it or you're not ready for it. You're never going to be ready for it. It's just you got to just go for it. And if you don't have success with the first one, keep going until you find someone that's going to be your therapist. So thank you very much for listening. Until next time. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Anxious Ambition podcast. You can find us on all podcast platforms. Follow us on Instagram at Anxious Ambition. You can actually watch this podcast over on YouTube. Lastly, check out our website, anxiousambition.com, where we have all of our merch, and a portion of every sale is donated to NAMI, and it helps support the individuals and their families who are suffering from mental illness. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, take it easy.
Anxious. Ambition.